Coming up on The Breakdown, the Senate's January 6th report has a couple of Trump-sized holes. Republicans would like it to just disappear, but we're not going to let that happen. And former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirschner stops by to talk about the odds of Trump paying a price for causing the insurrection. Plus, we'll take your questions from Twitter. Use hashtag AskTheBreakdown. It all starts now. Good evening and welcome to The Breakdown. I'm Tara Setmayer, and as always with me is the Rick Wilson. Rick, good to see you. Always love to see you in a nice sport jacket. Looking snazzy tonight. Oh my goodness.
No, not wearing pants.
Oh Lord, please. We will never find out. That is the beauty of
Florida. I'm full Florida.
Oh God! Just as long as you're not like a Matt Gaetz Florida man, we will fully embrace your Floridian roots.
Let's put it this way: my shorts don't involve Velcro or elastic in any way.
God. Oh my gosh! It's starting already, folks. That's the kind of night it's going to be. It's starting already. Yes. Oh my goodness! So before we get started with everything else, just a reminder that if you guys have questions for us, please send us your tweets at hashtag AskTheBreakdown, and of course we will try to answer some later in the show. And we have brought back the old school voicemail system. Please keep sending us messages. It's great. There's the number if you want to leave us a message, and we might just hear your voice on the show as well. And we have something else going on tonight, Rick, which is cool. Since the gear store is up and running in full effect, and we have very loyal followers, listeners, viewers, we are offering a special discount code for our gear store on our YouTube channel. So for those of you who watch us on YouTube, hello, thank you. We are sending out a special discount code for you. So make sure you check out the chat during the episode, and you can go get some discounts on the gear if you want. So check that out too. I love that. I know. I think it's a great way to, recognize our folks out there, because they come and watch us every night. We're giving you a shout out, recognizing you. All right. So tonight's headline, we're going to break down this January 6th report that the Senate put out. It came out this week, and I think that people need to realize that just because the Senate did a report, which is basically what they're supposed to do, this is part of their oversight capacity. It was the Senate Department of Homeland Security Committee and the Rules Committee together. This is what they're supposed to do. This is not to substitute for a January 6th commission, just so that we're all clear. As much as Mitch McConnell and Republicans want people to feel like that, this is not a substitute for that, because even though the report was fairly comprehensive, it pointed out some problems, which we'll talk about in a second, but it never got into Trump's role, didn't use the word insurrection, they used the word attack. And a lot of this is because the Democrats wanted Republican sign off on this so that they could say it was bipartisan, and Republicans wouldn't sign off on it if they got into the actual meat and politics of how this whole thing happened that day, which is problematic. And a commission would do that. So we all know that's why the Republicans don't want this commission. They're just saying, the Senate report's comprehensive enough. That's okay. It's not.
Tara, this would be like the Warren Commission saying someone shot a gun in Dealey Plaza.
Right.
Not describing what actually happened. And that is part of the cynicism of McConnell and his people, is that they will now say, we had a huge report, a big report, best report ever, totally thorough, covered everything, except of course for all the things.
Right.
So I think it's really important that people remember that accountability for January 6th will not and cannot occur unless we have a formal investigation. Now, outside groups like ours and other folks can try to hold people accountable individually and collectively, but this country needs a serious, comprehensive, thorough investigation of the role that Donald Trump and his people played in fomenting, inspiring, directing the attack on the Capitol. It's a very simple question. Did they or didn't they? If as they claim, it was Antifa, BLM, and radical Democrats doing it, they ought to welcome the investigation. But as we know, there's a technical term for that, and it is, of course, horseshit. They don't believe any of that. They know who did it. They know who was going to kill
That's
them,
right.
but they're too afraid of Donald Trump to do anything about it.
That's right. And just as a reminder that this attack, it actually was an insurrection by every definition. We have some, let's remind folks there, the fact that the Senate Republicans who claim to be so pro law enforcement and these constitutional stalwarts, that they think that day, the fact that they actually went out in public and said that day was just like any average day at the Capitol with visitors coming through. There's a little over enthusiastic or whatever the hell that asinine congressman said. Trying to whitewash what happened. That doesn't look like a normal day in the Capitol. Trust me. I spent 7 years in Capitol Hill. Those aren't normal visitors running through the Capitol. It was, right. It's crazy the lengths they were going to. But the other part about this too, as I was mentioning, why Democrats went along with kind of tamping down the language a little bit was because of the politics of the situation. You had Senator Gary Peters, who is the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. Who used to chair that committee? It was Ron Johnson. So thank God he's not there anymore. Could you imagine if he was still chairman of this committee? We wouldn't get anything. But Gary Peters, he said, quote, "There were significant, widespread, and unacceptable breakdowns in the intelligence gathering. The failure to adequately assess the threat of violence on that day contributed significantly to the breach of the Capitol. The attack was, quite frankly, planned in plain sight." That's important to know because I read part of this report. And the intelligence failures here are completely unacceptable. It reminds me of what happened with 9/11, where agencies weren't talking to each other for whatever reasons. In 9/11, there were some policy problems, the wall of separation between federal law enforcement and the intelligence community. But the point was that they did not have coordinated intelligence coordination amongst agencies. Something similar here. You had the FBI with that Norfolk memo that they had. They said that they sent it up, but they don't know what happened to it once it got to the Capitol Police. You have the Capitol Police Intelligence Division that has multiple people within that division that weren't talking to each other. Unfortunately, the acting chief of police right now of the Capitol Police, she was in that chain of command, and it looks to me like she didn't quite do her job in that respect either. Right. Here's something else that I learned. I know that the Capitol Police have a different system than some of the other federal law enforcement agencies. Like they have the Capitol Police Board, which is a very arcane setup. It's the they answer to the Sergeant at Arms for the House, the Senate, and the architect of the Capitol, for God's sakes. They're the governing board of the Capitol Police. A lot of us wondered why the hell the National Guard wasn't at the ready already there that day, so that the Capitol Police and police officers weren't just standing there about to get overrun. The reason we found out in this report that the freaking Capitol Police chief never made the written request to the Capitol Board to get the National Guard. And the guys on the Capitol Board, they didn't even know their own statutory authority for this whole process. They didn't even know it. So Tara, I can't believe that these guys have been up there that long and they don't understand how to protect their own capital. They knew that a war was coming. War was a term used in one of the intelligence reports.
Tara, this is one of these questions that we keep coming back to. It is the failure of imagination in today's world. People couldn't imagine Donald Trump becoming president in 2015 and 16. He became president. People couldn't imagine Donald Trump letting 500,000 Americans die of COVID because he was incompetent and believed you should shoot bleach in your ass. People didn't believe that he would ever order an attack on the US Capitol and that it would be carried out. They have a failure of imagination to understand how bad this can be. They do not understand their opponent. And I mean this, like, when I say they, I mean institutions, parties, associations. Every part of our society right now faces an existential threat from an authoritarian movement that is growing in power, growing in stature, and it is going to do things like the Capitol attack because they can get away with it and no one takes action against them. This is a truly dangerous moment, and it's something that I think that that, again, if you don't conceive of how dangerous it can be, it will be so dangerous that it destroys you someday.
That's absolutely right. And the fact that people who had been in these positions for many years, they have one job. The Capitol Police has one job. It's to protect Congress, the Capitol complex, the Speaker of the House. That's their job. That's it. And the fact that there were so many failures. I mean, something else about the Capitol Police that, a lot of folks also don't know is similar to the Secret Service in that you can't just FOIA request what's going on there because of how sensitive the information is. So there have been problems for years within the Capitol Police, either being underfunded, not properly trained. Something else that came out in this report is that out of the 1,200 officers that were on scene that day between Capitol Police and the DC Police Department, only 300 of them actually had proper training and weapons to handle a riot like that. Only 300 out of 1,200. That is shameful. So that goes to show you that there's another area of deficiency that has to be addressed. The Capitol Police Force has lost 70 officers since January 6th. 70. That's a lot. So another agency in crisis here. You had the FBI director, Christopher Wray. He was up on Capitol Hill testifying today about a myriad of things, but he was asked about this. And he was asked a little bit about, who are they investigating? Are they investigating Trump as an insider of this thing? We're going to ask our guest, Glenn Kirschner, a little bit more about what he thought of Christopher Wray's testimony. But Christopher Wray, when he was asked that question, he said, quote, "I don't think it would be appropriate for me to be discussing whether or not we are or aren't investigating specific individuals." Very, political answer. We're not going to comment if there's an ongoing investigation or not. We can't confirm or deny or not. But there were some other answers that he gave that I thought were a little problematic, and we're gonna ask Glenn Kirchner in the next block what he thought about that, because he was a federal prosecutor for a very long time.
He knows his stuff.
He knows his stuff. He knows the stuff, and I know that our viewers are wondering, like, what the hell's going to happen to Trump, right? Where is his legal liability in this? Do we have all of these federal cases going on? Is Trump going to be brought up on sedition charges or whatever? What's his culpability here? And so we'll ask Glenn. We have a tweet here. It says, FBI Director Christopher Wray on the Capitol attack, quote, "We are treating it as an act of domestic terrorism and investigating it through our Joint Terrorism Task Force. And I would expect to see more charges." That's in reference to the people involved, not the president directly. Right. He made another comment, which I thought was interesting, where he said that they don't investigate motive. But that's not consistent with what the domestic terrorism statutes say. Motive matters in how you charge and investigate these things. So sure. I don't know. He was being a little squirrely because I don't think he wanted to be pinned down on that. It's not a comfortable topic.
You think?
He's getting a lot of pressure. At least he doesn't have to worry about getting fired now. Biden's not going to call him over and have dinner and say, "Hey, can you find it to clear so and so from such and such?"
Well, oh my God, I do think that's one thing that some folks on the left are a little frustrated by, is they didn't like the politicized Justice Department under Trump, but now that Biden has done the right thing, instead of the Justice Department, you go do your independent thing.
Right.
It's a little frustrating to see, that they're not necessarily pursuing, Don Jr. and Rudy and all the dipshits that were there that day, crying out for trial by combat, etc.
Well, so not yet, Rick. Right?
It is better. Know. It is true, but it is better to have a Justice Department that is studiously non-political than it is to have one that does political things that you want. It never ends the way you think it will.
That's right. And Biden is walking a very tight rope here because he does not want to appear political, right? The political retribution thing, which is why I said not yet. Maybe some time will pass as they get out of this kind of, honeymoon period, and then they'll be able to do that. So it won't look like the first thing they did when they got in office was to go after the Trumps, as warranted as it may be. It doesn't matter. Right. There's the politics is always around. But something that's also important, why these Republicans are still so resistant and trying to hide behind this report, which, like we said, is not comprehensive enough because it does not answer a lot of the questions of how this originated, Trump's role. There are other things that are not necessarily criminal, but could be inappropriate, that should be fixed. we want to remind folks what the Lincoln Project put out about another reason why Republicans really want this to go away. Check out our ad, Conspiracy.
Republicans are afraid that Americans will discover the truth of their role in insurrection. That when police barriers were breached and the Capitol was stormed, Republicans hadn't lost control. In fact, everything was going according to plan. Plans that were hatched at all levels of the Republican Party, from low-level staffers to GOP organizations, all the way up to sitting members of Congress.
It's just simply false narrative.
They knew.
We will march to the Capitol.
They weren't unwitting allies. These were co-conspirators.
Holy cow.
Republicans spent years spreading misinformation, peddling false conspiracy theories. But there was one evil plot they are desperate to cover up. One conspiracy that's true. January 6th was an inside job.
That's the ball game, folks. That's why they don't want a commission right there.
Right. And that ad, Tara, it also represents something fundamental to our mission in this country. And folks can come at us at every different angle you want to. You can call us whatever you want to call us. You have not defeated us. We are in this fight. We will continue to be in this fight. This is something that is vital. You know, the other day someone said, I'd rather live in a country where my position is in the minority than live in a country where it is in the majority in an authoritarian system. You can hit us as hard as you want, as many times as you want. We're going to keep getting up. We're going to keep getting back into this fight, because what is at stake is the future of this republic. What is at stake is whether or not this country lives on as a bastion of freedom and liberty and small d democratic principles, or whether it sinks into authoritarianism, kleptocracy, this sort of modern day Putinism with a Southern accent. It is unacceptable to us to do anything except stay on the line. It is unacceptable to us to do anything except stay in the fight. And it's one of the reasons that we are so profoundly grateful to all of you who watch, who participate, who are part of our social media platforms, who listen to the podcast, who donate to keep the Lincoln Project, in fighting trim and able to do the work we have to do. We are enormously grateful for that. It encourages us every day to know that you guys have stuck with us through thick and thin. And we all recognize this country is headed for a 2022 election that is going to be the most dangerous moment of our political history, including what happened in 2020. Because now there's a generation of these authoritarians coming up behind us, behind Trump. They're more dangerous, they're more slick, they're more evil, they're more social media savvy, they're less completely orange and crazy. We're going to have to keep this fight up, folks, and we need you by our sides, and we hope you'll continue to support the Lincoln Project and stand with us on this fight.
That's right. Less bronzer, more crazy. Oh my gosh. Well, before we go into our first break and bring in our guest tonight, I wanted to talk about the Lincoln Project podcast, because this topic that we're talking about now is part of the most recent episode of the podcast. Yeah. So we have a special promo. Take a look.
If we don't have a commission by the Congress that holds to account everybody who is tangentially involved in an attack on the Congress, you get another generation of political violence.
There it is. Steve Schmidt. Wise words, right? It's right
totally
out of the authoritarian playbook.
Totally on point. And we are in a situation where the Republicans in DC who anonymously talk to the press and say, oh, Trump's diminished, he's fading, it's over. They are walking past the graveyard. They will not survive this. The people that hate us and hate the Democrats, they hate people who don't love Trump inside the party even more. And Mitch McConnell will be first on their list if Donald Trump's people prevail this fall. He may not survive as majority leader if Donald Trump's people prevail in Senate elections this fall.
That's right. I mean, we're okay with that, except that who might replace him could be way worse. And, which is why we continue to stay focused on the midterms in 2022, and why we continue
Just y'all should all rehearse this. Y'all should all rehearse this line. Senate Majority Leader Lindsey Graham.
Oh, God. We can't. I can't bring my mouth to form those words. I will not speak that into existence. No way. Hi.
Candyman.
Right. No. Oh, ew. Coming up, we'll speak to retired career federal prosecutor Glenn Kirschner about the investigation into January 6th, and we will ask him, will justice be served? So stick around right after this break.
Well, they're burning the house down.
Please protect yourself.
Vice President, I'm speaking.
This is an embarrassment. If you count the legal votes, I easily win.
What the fuck?
Have some faith, I'll make you a believer.
The men who followed this flag 150 years ago knew what it meant. Treason against their country. The death of the United States. America defeated the men who followed that flag. Those with honor surrendered and cast it aside forever. So why does it keep showing up today at events supporting Donald Trump? And why does he call the folks who carry it very fine people?
I think there's blame on both sides, but you also had people that were very fine people.
What does it say that they're all in for Trump? What does it say that he won't condemn a flag of hate, division, and losers? For us, it says this is a time for choosing America or Trump.
Paid for by the Lincoln Project, which is responsible for the content of this advertising.
And we're back on the breakdown. I want to bring in tonight's guest, retired career federal prosecutor and MSNBC legal analyst, Glenn Kirschner, also a friend of mine. Glenn, good to see you. So glad we got you on the breakdown. I've been telling your folks for a couple of weeks that we were going to have you on once we're back, and here you are. Lots to talk about, Glenn. It is not a slow news day today. Welcome. So before we get into talking about the Senate January 6th Commission report and all of that stuff, there's a breaking news headline happening right now about the Trump administration. We've been talking about authoritarianism and how Donald Trump and Trumpism and his minions and the impact of what he's done and what it means to make sure we don't have these people in power anymore. Breaking news tonight from the New York Times. Apparently, the Trump administration was investigating Senate Intelligence Committee Democrats and requesting their communications to find, quote, leakers. That is I can't even begin to explain to people the incredible level of federal overreach that is.
Wow.
You want to talk about authoritarianism? Holy shit. Glenn, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really think we ought to be focusing on the folks who tried to overthrow our government. Call me foolish, but when I see the investigation into the insurrection, which is building, and I will say, in defense of my friends and former colleagues at the DC U.S. Attorney's Office who are heading up the investigation into the insurrection, I have to tell you, Tara, from the outside looking in, because they don't inappropriately share information with their old chief of homicide, I know these people well. Some of them who are on the insurrection case, I tried their first murder cases with them when they were baby lawyers. Makes me feel very old, but I trust these people to handle the most consequential criminal case, perhaps in our nation's history. I also trust them to babysit my kids and my grandkids. That's how much I trust them. And when I see what they're doing with this case, and mind you, I investigated RICO cases, I investigated gang cases. These things take a long time. I hate to say this investigation is in its infancy, but it actually is. And the fact that they already have nearly 500 arrests, that doesn't excuse the fact that they didn't make arrests that day. And I heard you all discussing the law enforcement failures, the failures of communication, the failures of imagination. I have a slightly different view. I think Donald Trump's executive branch set the Capitol up, quite frankly. I mean, I saw the law enforcement forces that were deployed to the BLM protests. I mean, you had every imaginable law enforcement agency there. And can I tell you, working as a prosecutor in DC for decades, do you know how many law enforcement agencies we have?
Oh,
so
dozens.
We were the only prosecutor's office, but we worked with not only the Metropolitan Police Department, right, the local cops, our local partners in crime fighting, but look, we've got the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, the Park Police, the Capitol Police, Secret Service Uniform Division, U.S. Marshal Service, Amtrak Police, Postal Police, Smithsonian Police, you name it, we've got it. Do you realize at the BLM protests, I even saw the Bureau of Prisons riot squad deployed, and I've never seen them deployed anywhere.
Yep.
This was a setup. This was a setup by the executive branch because he wanted his base, his supporters, his angry mob to succeed in stopping, action word, stopping what was going on in that building. So yeah, aggressive investigation into these kind of leaks. Are you kidding me? How about we focus on saving our democracy? Because I know we're going to get to whether Trump is going to be held accountable criminally. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. Let me tell you this. I'm not an alarmist, but if he is not held accountable criminally, we are slouching toward the end of our republic.
No question about it. Glenn, I think we're exactly on the same sheet of music here. Unless we make sure that Donald Trump's role in the 6th is met with investigation and a legal proceeding. As I like to say all the time, if you have a failed coup and don't punish the people who tried to pull off the coup, that's a training exercise.
Yep.
Right now, they just didn't make it to the finish line that day. They'll try again some way, somehow, unless people are held accountable. I mean, I think
he's warming up his crowd for Insurrection 2.0 right now.
That's right. As a matter of fact, we actually have a clip from over the weekend where he did that wink and a nod to his crowd. Again, let's show our viewers.
I want to thank everybody for the tremendous support you've shown. We're going to take back the Senate, take back the House. We're going to take back the White House, and sooner than you think. It's going to be really something special. But the love and the affection and the respect that you've given all of us, it's really important. The Republican Party is stronger than it's ever been, and it's going to be a lot stronger than it is right now. We're going to turn it around. We're going to turn it around fast. Thank you all very much. That support has been so incredible. Thank you.
He can't quit this. He cannot quit this. The day of the freaking insurrection, he said, "We love you. You know, you're patriots." It's unbelievable. Why? Because to both of your points, he has yet to pay a price at all for this. Even losing the presidency was not enough for him. He's still out here doing this. Glenn, you know, in your opinion, because a lot of people say, you know, is he going to be charged? Is he not going to be charged? Make your case for what you think it would take for him to actually be charged.
Yeah, he's going to be charged. All right. I'm not a betting man, but I would bet $1. That's my betting limit. He is going to be charged. The only open question is he charged first by state authorities or by federal authorities? But at the end of the day, Donald Trump is a federal problem. He has violated so many of the laws of our nation. He has victimized the American people. He needs to be indicted federally. It's great that New York is undoubtedly moving toward an indictment. Every data point we have seen, including the most recent grand jury being impaneled for 6 months. That is a Trump-centric grand jury. They will indict him, and that's lovely because the man's been doing financial crimes in New York for decades. I hope Georgia indicts him because he violated state Georgia election laws, and we've got it on tape. I was up on wires. Anytime I got my bad guys talking on tape about how many kilos they're going to move through the District of Columbia, I got them. They have Donald Trump telling election officials.
If you could just change some of those votes in Fulton County.
Hey, I just need 11,780 votes to fall off the back of a truck. Right. I mean, Donald Trump is a mob boss. Donald Trump runs a RICO conspiracy. And I actually believe they're going to use the mini RICO laws in New York that are patterned after the federal RICO laws to go after the Trump organization. New York and Georgia are great. The other thing that is a pet peeve of mine, because I was a homicide guy for 22 of my 30 years, he is criminally responsible for avoidable COVID deaths. He, Kirchner, and Pence. Criminally reckless homicide. Give me that case. I'll make it in 3 hours to a DC jury. I promise you, based on what we learned from those Bob Woodward tapes and the lies he was telling us at the same time, chasing us all out into the oncoming deadly pandemic, he has criminal liability. I don't know if the states are going to have the gumption to bring those charges, but I hope he is being investigated for avoidable COVID deaths. But folks, he's got campaign finance violations and a conspiracy with Michael Cohen, right? That he basically stole the election by burying incriminating information about porn stars and playmates to deprive us of the full value of our vote, not to mention Russian collusion, right? He's got that he has yet to be held accountable for. He bribed and extorted President Zelensky. I could make that case to a jury in my sleep. He obstructed congressional proceedings by telling all of his executive branch officials, do not comply with lawfully issued congressional subpoenas. Say, invoke executive privilege. He didn't say, let's litigate it. He said, do not comply. I'm sorry. That's textbook obstructing congressional inquiries. He witness tampered with Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch while she was appearing before Congress. He incited an insurrection. He's probably involved in a seditious conspiracy. How many crimes can this man get away with? Bob Mueller, my old homicide chief, who taught me how to be a federal homicide prosecutor and taught me how to run the homicide section in DC, said, listen, he can be indicted when he leaves office, and I have meticulously documented 10 counts of obstruction of justice. And the McGahn thing was a stroke of genius by Congress. I disagree with people who say Congress threw up their hands and they accepted half a loaf. No, there are 5 important reasons that McGahn's testimony was important, and it moves us closer to a Donald Trump indictment. So listen, all of the indicators are there. All of the pieces in place. Now, let me just dive in for 30 seconds to the legal weeds and highlight why the prosecutors in the DC U.S. Attorney's Office are doing this right. They had a guy plead out last week, a guy named Paul Allard Hodgkins, right? People saw this guilty plea and people began to lose their minds. I can't believe the prosecutors let this guy plead to 1 count and they dismissed 4. They let him plead guilty without cooperation. He's only facing 2 years in prison. What are the prosecutors doing? You know what they're doing? They made him plead guilty to obstructing an official congressional proceeding. That's a building block guilty plea. Because he did that because Donald Trump told him to do it. Donald Trump will be charged for the insurrection. I would bet $1.
That's a pretty big bet there, Glenn. I know I can't see our comments right now, but I know that there are Lincoln Project people probably very excited at that prospect. And I mean, because it really would be the right thing. He needs to pay a price. To your point, you made a couple of really great points. One about the his intimidation of the Ukrainian president and that whole nonsense, which was that he got impeached for in the first place. We just saw a couple days ago, CNN uncovered a Rudy Giuliani audio where he's basically telling them to look into Joe Biden And, like that was the intimidation, the role that Rudy Giuliani played in that whole debacle. But it's on tape now. I mean, it was so clear what went on there. So there's that. There's still things going on there. You brought up Don McGahn. For those who don't remember, Don McGahn was the original White House counsel. I actually worked with his wife, Shannon, for a long time up on Capitol Hill. Don McGahn was not one of those crazy Trumpers. He was actually a well-respected lawyer in Republican circles. He worked for Jones Day. And he was one of the people who we thought, all right, he's going into the White House. It's one of the adults in the room that will try to, keep the wheels on the bus here. But what Don McGahn was caught in the middle of, and in the Mueller report, there's a lot of stuff that if people should go back and read that involved Don McGahn. His testimony to the Congressional Committee this week was very interesting. You said there were 5 main points that we should know about. Let's go ahead and explain that.
Yeah, so I did a top 5 list. If I was as entertaining as Dave Letterman, it would have been a top 10 list. But at the top five reasons why Don McGahn's testimony was important. I could use a Paul Schaefer drum roll. So number 5, we'll work our way back, is the substance of his testimony. Because he said in substance, Donald Trump committed obstruction of justice. By all of the facts and information he relayed, that is the conclusion. 2, it's no longer hearsay. Because what we had in the Mueller report was Don McGahn told Bob Mueller that Donald Trump said that. All of that melts away because now it's sworn testimony of a firsthand account of Donald Trump's obstruction of justice that can be used in court in all sorts of ways. And it would take a long time to go through the legal niceties of the different ways we can use sworn transcripts in an official proceeding, but they are enormously beneficial to a prosecution in a way the Mueller report was not. Okay. Number 3, I think you just alluded to it, Tara. Don McGahn is a truth teller. I think by all accounts, think what you will about his politics and his positions. He's a truth teller. He is a reliable witness. That hurts Donald Trump. 4, and I love this one, Bill Barr can't spin this testimony.
That's right.
The way he spun the Mueller report, and one of my favorite judges, Judge Walton, called him out on it. Said Bill Barr spun the Mueller report, mischaracterized the Mueller report, and Bill Barr lacks credibility. I'll tell you, as a federal prosecutor, I'd crawl under a rock and die if a federal judge said that about me. Bill Barr wears
about the Attorney General.
I know. Unbelievable.
And the number one reason that Don McGahn's testimony was hugely consequential is because now Congress can use it to make a criminal referral of Donald Trump for obstructing justice directly to the Department of Justice. And guess what? The White House is taken out of the mix because, like you, Rick, I love and I respect the separation between the executive branch and the Department of Justice. It's what makes both of those agencies work the way they're supposed to. Donald Trump, right. I'm trying to find a nice word, stomped all over that separation. And he did it in the worst and most nefarious ways by protecting and rewarding his criminal associates like Stone and Bannon and Manafort, and trying to punish his enemies like McCabe, who fortunately my friend and former U.S. Attorney Jesse Liu would not cave. I'm extrapolating based on what we know from the public reporting, would not cave and indict or ask a grand jury to indict McCabe. So now the Biden White House can be out of the mix, and Congress can take the testimony of Don McGahn, and they will get the testimony of others, package it up in a beautiful criminal referral, and drop it right on Merrick Garland's desk. That will bring it to a head.
That is a phenomenal summary.
Before you were on, Glenn, I said we were talking a little bit about the Justice Department. Some people on the left are unhappy it's not moving quickly to do all these things. But as I said, you want the Justice Department to be independent. We didn't like it when Trump was using it as a tool. And it will be much more valid in the minds of Americans, even those people who are Republicans, when the Justice Department, moving without political influence from the White House, takes these cases and brings indictments and starts rolling the ball down the hill. because they will have been back to what the DOJ, when your era was, they were out of the game of politics. They were out of the partisan shuffle. They played this straight because the country relies on a strong, nonpartisan Justice Department to protect us at every level.
Amen.
That's how it's supposed to work. All right, stay tuned. We will be coming back with more with Glenn Kirschner. We'll take some of your questions. We'll talk a little more insurrection and find out what other predictions Glenn Kirschner has about who else might get indicted and go to jail. We like this. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I want to know why what happened in Myanmar can't happen here.
No reason. I mean, it should happen here. No reason. Right? That's right.
America has crossed a line. The Republican Party believes in ending the American experiment, led by a man obsessed with power and money, who will say and do anything to seize control again.
This election was rigged.
To punish those who oppose him. His followers don't just disagree with us. They've got something worse in mind. We know what national populism and authoritarianism lead to every time.
That's what this is all about.
That's why we will never compromise with this evil. We will never step back from the line because we believe in America. Are you in this fight, or have they already won?
And welcome back to The Breakdown. We're here with our friend Glenn Kirchner, retired career federal prosecutor, spent many decades in Washington, D.C., prosecuting the bad guys. And we're talking about the federal bad guys, starting with Donald Trump, and whether they're actually going to be held accountable and what that looks like. Glenn, we were talking in the beginning of the show about January 6th. I was talking about the Senate report and some of the deficiencies that they found, and there were just so many breakdowns. It's heartbreaking as someone who grew up in a law enforcement family and is married to a federal officer. Anytime I see these failures within law enforcement, and it costs lives, and it hurts me. It hurts me deeply because I want law enforcement to do well and succeed. But some of the things that we also found out in that report, and I know you were a former JAG officer, is that the National Guard, because a lot of people questioned where the hell was the National Guard and what took them so long. The National Guard actually didn't show up until 5:20 in the afternoon, several hours after this thing was already off and running and out of control. They said that there was a lot of bureaucratic backlog. People were assessing and they were trying to get permission and twiddling their thumbs, counting, ammo. Like there were all these things that were not happening because they weren't proactive in this. What do you think that there was political pressure at the Pentagon that contributed to that bureaucratic backlog that slowed things down in that federal response? I mean, you're a DC guy. How unusual was that lack of response and lack of proactive response on the part of the National Guard? I mean, we've got DC, Maryland, Virginia. It's not like we have any shortage of federal troops ready to go here.
Yeah, and the National Guard knows how to do DC security. I mean, that's something that they know better than other jurisdictions around the nation. I happen to think, as I said, this was more setup than it was intelligence failure or information sharing failure. There was some of that. And frankly, it's those collateral issues like intelligence failures that I think militate in favor of needing a commission. Now, of course, the Republicans voted a commission down. Why? Well, it's not rocket science. If I'm a bank robber and I'm asked to vote whether we want a commission to investigate bank robberies, I'm voting no. And I think you all both already touched on that. There are some Republicans who are complicit in perhaps organizing, perhaps funding, perhaps inciting and inspiring the insurrection. Of course, they don't want it investigated. But here's the thing. The Department of Justice, right, the FBI and the federal prosecutors are not going to be investigating whether there was political interference with the deployment of troops or of forces to protect the Capitol. That's the kind of thing we need a commission for. And that's the kind of thing that we may need legislation for. That's why you need a commission. Now, if we have to end up with a select committee, as long as we end up with a prosecution. And I did think the 128-page report, which, yes, had a big old hole in it, like who is it that pointed the angry mob at the Capitol and pulled the trigger and said, go stop what's going on in that building. That's a prosecutor's dream. When you have the person who is heading up this criminal endeavor, who expressly directs the people to go stop the political process. I mean, that's why, and I will say, I thought it was cute that they attached, I think the last 22 pages of the report, they attached Donald Trump's speech verbatim. I hope that's a sign of things to come, because that's where it all starts, ultimately, with a criminal prosecution. But I believe Donald Trump is on the hook for inciting an insurrection. I believe Don Jr., I believe Mo Brooks, and I believe Rudy Giuliani, acting as Donald Trump's mouthpieces, are on the hook. And if I hear one more person say it's so hard to prove criminal intent, guilty state of mind, mens rea, goodness gracious. I did it for 30 years in both military courts and civilian courts. And you know what? Never once did I have a defendant say during the crime, excuse me, I'm intending to rob this bank. Excuse me, I'm intending to rape this woman. Excuse me, just so you have evidence of my criminal intent, let me lay it out for you. I never had that. You know what I did have? I had criminal conduct from which I could infer guilty intent, guilty knowledge, criminal mens rea. I did it for 30 years. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's how we try cases. So anybody who says it's so hard to prove is somebody who hasn't taken a lot of hard cases.
So there were no Jack Nicholson, damn right I did order the code red moments.
Yeah, I ordered the code red.
That never happened.
Glenn, one other area, and then we'll let you go. I know we're running along. I am fascinated by the role, and I can't wait to see the FBI gather up all the telecommunications records of the Stop the Steal guys, Roger Stone, Ali Alexander, Alex Jones, all these other people that were all wrapped around that Stop the Steal thing, Amy Kremer. I want to see where they were talking to the White House and Trump world officials the day before, the night before, the day of. I think we're going to see some absolutely remarkable connections that lead us to understand this was a bigger conspiracy than it even looks like right now. I mean, and that's the kind of case you with all the, don't you think all the telecommunications records are going to be like a linchpin of this in putting these guys under the gun?
We lost him. I wanted to hear
that.
I wanted to hear his answer on that.
Damn it.
Glenn. Well, we will have
Glenn, thank you, brother.
Back.
You're amazing.
Yes, thank you so much. And because he cut off, I didn't get a chance to ask him about his democracy pledge. If you don't follow Glenn on Twitter, please follow him. He's fantastic and quite candid. He doesn't hold anything back. He doesn't pull any punches. And he's also started.
I wouldn't know what that's like, Tara.
Yeah, we don't know what that's like around here. But he also started something called the Democracy Pledge, and he outlines what that means and how people can get involved and how to hold companies accountable for the Democracy Pledge. So be sure to check that out and support his efforts, because it's in line with what we do, which is protecting our democracy. All right, let's take some of your questions. What have we got? First up, Lynn Jerry. A democracy presumes a citizenry able to make rational, informed decisions. 74 million people voted for a psychotic con man. I can neither trust their decisions nor live with the results. How does a pro-democracy movement deal with this? I am serious. Go ahead, Rick. I mean, Lynn, we deal with this every day.
We do. And look, this is why while we have a democratic system of government, we are also a constitutional republic, because the founders recognized that people are frequently irrational. Even when we agree with them, they can frequently be irrational. So we have these other checks and balances built into the system to prevent just the will of the mob of a pure democracy from running rampant, which, because of human nature, it can and does do. You don't want to be governed by 74 million crazy people. You want a system of government that has some fire breaks in it and some controls in it that prevent that kind of mob mentality from taking over. Now, the other part of it is we all have to work a lot harder in this country on the civics. We have to work a lot harder on the role of citizenship and what people value in society in terms of citizen involvement in the political process. And we have to address some of the things that fuel the crazy machine. Fox, Facebook, social media platforms that feed crazy people more food to make them more crazy. Crazy chow, if you will.
Yes. And if you want to hear more about civics and civic engagement and how you can get involved in that, check out our sister organization, the Franklin Project, just launched a couple weeks ago. And that's their sole focus is civic engagement, education, and encouraging people to be good citizens and basically how to organize your power as a citizen and in your community and what to do. So check out the Franklin Project. A little plug for our friends over there. Unplanned. All right, next question.
You're welcome.
You're welcome over there at the Franklin Project. All right, not Josh Hawley's hemorrhoid. These people come up with funny ass Twitter handles. Okay, should we point out politicians like Josh Hawley seemed to support the big lie and insurrection, or that they really don't believe the big lie, but won't stand in front of their constituents and say it? I think it's the latter. They need to tell the wackos to go home.
They won't.
They won't. Yeah, exactly. This is about power, political power, and they know that they need the crazies to vote them and vote them in office and keep them there.
Yep.
And so instead of doing the right thing and actually standing up for democracy and the Constitution, like I said, these guys that walk around with their pocket constitutions and are quick to hold them up and blame liberals and cancel culture and owning the libs and all that bullshit, they're actually acting in complete opposition to what they claim were their fundamental beliefs, against constitutional principles, all for pure political expediency and power.
Yep.
It is political craven behavior at its worst. And the only way to rid ourselves of people like that is to make sure there are more of us than them who show up at the ballot box. That's how it works in a constitutional republic. All right. We have a voicemail or two, I think, as well. Let's hear some voices.
Go.
Hey guys, this is Ron out in Southern California. We love you guys out here. We would really like to see the Lincoln Party someday. And what are the possibilities of developing a third party? I know that third parties are tough, but let us know.
Well, Ron, thank you for your message, and we really appreciate your kind words. Third parties are hard, and we have to be honest about what that does. And if I felt like we could help support a third party that would split off and hive off a meaningful fraction of the GOP, I would encourage it. We are not there yet in this country. The Republican Party is fairly unified. However, what we can do is tell people you don't have to leave your party. You just have to take a vacation from it. You just have to have a little alone time from it, which is what we did in the 2020 election. But look, we may end up at a point where responsible conservatives, who are still a large number of Americans, are still principled conservatives, not the majority of Republicans, sadly. They may end up in a position where they ethically and morally have to leave the GOP. And I think at that point, I think America needs a center-right party. I know, me too. I think America needs a center-right party, but it's not the GOP of today. So it's going to be an interesting thing. But thank you, Ron. That was a very astute question. Thank you so much for calling in.
I just have something quick to add to that. One, there is a group of Republicans or, former Republicans that are out there led by Evan McMullin and Miles Taylor that are trying to organize this because there are some former Republican elected officials who are the sane ones that are looking at this going, what the hell are we going to do? The Republicans have lost their freaking minds. We need a center-right party. The problem is in the mechanics of it because it's so difficult, and the ballot access in across the country is so difficult in a lot of places. The system was designed that way. The two parties have a lot of power over ballot access. So it's a matter of how you galvanize enough people and enough money to be able to run candidates under a different banner. And that takes a lot of organization. So people are working on it. They're working on it. How successful that's going to be, how soon that's going to be successful is a different story. But there are people working on it. And there are Republicans who are out there that are starting to identify themselves as Lincoln Republicans, interestingly enough. Some of these candidates, watch for that coming up in the midterm elections. For these Republicans that know that they can't leave the party if they want to run because of what I just said, ballot access, but they are differentiating themselves from the Trumpers, and they're calling themselves Lincoln Republicans. I saw that just happen in New Jersey with one of the races there. So I think that's quite interesting that, they're stealing our branding. I guess we were on to something, Rick.
Hey, I'll take it.
We have one
more. Take
more.
it with my blessing.
Yes. We'll share Lincoln with you. I think we have one more.
Greetings. My name is Victoria. I am a New York transplant living in Toledo, Ohio. What is the Lincoln Project's strategy for reaching the delusioned masses that are out there? Thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing from a diehard liberal. Ciao.
Quick 15-second answer, Rick, and then we have to go to break.
Victoria, thank you so much for the question. We are trying to break through and fight a lot of these battles where the truth and the lie collide, and to show people that the fantasy world drawn for them by Trump, Fox, Facebook, etc., is just that, a fantasy world. We're trying to penetrate that bubble with a lot of the things we do in the States. So great question.
Yes.
We could talk
Thank you for supporting
about
us. And keep watching Lincoln Project. We are constantly putting out content. That's what we do. That's how we try and make this world a better place. All right. Coming up next, we're going to take a quick break, but we're also going to play a drinking game because, it's happy hour somewhere all the time, maybe now, but stay tuned. We're going to have a fun time after the break. We've got our drinks. All right, welcome back to the breakdown. So to wrap up the week and the show, we want to play a little game called Headline or Horseshit. Because, there's a lot of crazy out there, and sometimes you just can't believe, is it real, or is it horseshit? So our producers chose 3 crazy headlines from the last week, but one of them is fake. Now, we don't know what headlines they picked for us. So this is like real. We don't know what's happening. So we have to guess which one out of the 3 is horseshit. All right. Now, if we get it right, we drink. If we get it wrong, we drink. So no matter what happens,
good game. Solid rules.
Yes, solid game. And Tiki's around here somewhere too. So if he jumps up on here, then you drink because Tiki time is still a thing. All right. Let's do it. First headline. Doctor claims during Ohio State House testimony that vaccine causes magnetism, makes spoons stick to person's body. Oh, for God's sakes. We got like a Magneto thing happening. I don't know.
It's true, though. That's a real headline. That's a real headline. She is a batshit crazy doctor who said that. And I think 5G came into the equation as well. So that's a real headline.
Of course it did. Of course it did. All right. I agree with you. And I'm sure there was some tinfoil going around somewhere on that one. Okay.
No
I agree.
question about
real. Next. Lancaster County Republican mayoral candidate attempted to steal used vaccine syringes for use in campaign ad. Oh, for fuck's sake. Stealing used syringes? That's disgusting.
What?
I think that's possible. People are nuts. People are nuts.
I don't know. That's pretty
scary. We got a
scary.
Tiki sighting.
Tiki
we got
sighting.
a Tiki tail.
Drink.
We got a Tiki. There he is.
Yeah, Tiki.
I knew it. Tiki, you want to take a drink? Okay. It's a drink no matter what. All right. Swarm of cicadas ground White House press corps charter, delaying flight to Europe.
True headline.
So, really? You think that's true?
True headline. I do. I think it's a true headline.
I saw Biden swat away a cicada on his way to the G7. So I'm going to say that's not true.
I'm guessing it's true.
All right. So I say that
Which
the cicadas are not true. I say the cicadas are horseshit.
I say the syringes are horseshit.
All right. Let's reveal.
Tell us. Boom!
Ah! All right, Rick. You won this one. I guess we drink anyway.
We'll be back next time with more headline or horseshit.
Let us know if you like this game. We're trying them out. I think I kind of like the headline or horseshit because
you can play at home.
You can play along right with us. Oh my gosh. All right, folks. So as we head into the weekend, we want to make sure that everyone knows what's happening next week. We have a very special guest coming up on Tuesday. Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's ex-fixer. He is joining us. He is now out of serving time from his dealings with Trump and what happened there. He's a friend of the Lincoln Project. He is coming to join us on Tuesday. I cannot wait for this conversation. There's so much to talk about, what's going on, and he knows so much, particularly about what's happening in New York, what he can talk to us about. But if you had one question for Michael Cohen, folks, what would it be? Send us your questions for Michael Cohen, and we will pick an audience question or two for him on Tuesday's show. But make sure you tweet us at #AskTheBreakdown, follow us at LPTV, and we'll pull a couple questions for Michael Cohen. So you do not want to miss that show. I'm looking forward to that because we've been inviting Michael on and been saying, come on the show. He heard us. So Tuesday, make sure you tune in. One last thing, our podcast. We showed a little clip before, but be sure if you have not yet, please subscribe to the Lincoln Project podcast. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts, you can get the Lincoln Project podcast.
Free wherever fine podcasts are available.
Indeed. And we have our new Lunch with Lincoln, which is happening on Fridays now, our second one tomorrow. It's at noon, and it's with Steve Schmidt and Reed Galen. So be sure to check that out tomorrow. Get a little more Steve Schmidt wisdom. And don't forget, like I said, next week, special episode on Tuesday. Michael Cohen. Have a great night. Have a great weekend and be safe. We'll see you Tuesday.
Thanks, everybody.